Once upon a dream. O fool, I should go mad. The thorns holding the prince back were already turning black and crumbling away. Aurora Rose helped him along, pulling and ripping, but she didn't really need to do much. They decayed into nothing under her touch. Rose! As soon as his arms were free, Philip wrapped her in a tight hug. She bore it because it felt nice, and she was too tired to do much else. Then she collapsed on the ground like a young child or an old doll. "Oh, Rose," Philip said, kneeling down next to her. "I'll never know," she said, voice empty. "I'll never know why they thought it was safer to send me away. I'll never know if they missed me. I'll never know if they really wanted a son instead. I'll never hear them say, 'I'm sorry,' or 'I love you,' or 'It's the worst mistake we ever made,' or even, 'Someday, when you're queen, you'll understand.' Rose." He stroked her cheek. "I will never know what they really looked like," she shrieked. She was finding it hard to breathe, her lungs moving and her chest heaving in great sudden gaps, but it didn't feel like any air was getting in. How they walked, or hugged, or laughed. Shh. Philip took her in his arms again and held her tightly. "Shh, quiet. Breathe now. I know. It's a terrible thing to lose your parents, even ones you don't know." "Even ones?" she hiccuped angrily. Philip bit his lip and took a deep, patient breath. "Rose, my mother died, remember? I had issues with her, but she was still my mother. She's gone. She won't see me married or made king or enjoy any grandchildren I would even give her." "Oh." Suddenly she felt stupid and even more miserable. What a selfish, horrible beast she was on top of everything else. It was like the only things that mattered were things that happened to her. Here was this, albeit somewhat voluptuous, prince with an entire past that was very real for him, and she didn't even think about it. "I'm an idiot. I'm sorry." "You're not. And my tragedy doesn't diminish yours. You just found out your parents are dead. Grieve for them. It's all right." "I can't do this, Philip," she finally said, covering her eyes with her hands, trying to squish the rest of the tears out. She felt completely drained, beaten up, bloody, weak, and done. "I can't." "You have to," he said firmly. "Take another moment, and then get up. Now that your parents are gone, your people really have no one to lead them. You're the only one. You have to save them, and then lead them out for the chaos when we awake." "I don't even know where we're going," she shouted in despair. She pointed around the tall cathedral of trees, then at the path which peered out. "I don't know if our cottage even exists here. It was all a long shot, wasn't it? Find the cottage, maybe find the fairies, maybe find a way out. We don't know if this will really work." And then that's when we heard the singing. "A mighty woodsman swings his axe, alone among the trees, oh, lonely with no girl or wife, until a maid he sees, oh." "I can't take much more of this," she said in a low voice. "No, wait," Philip said, cocking his head. There was a strange look on his face. "I know that song. It's going to be a demon, or a psychotic villager, or a rabid fox, or some sort of terrible, horrible little boy who looks like you with a giant spiky mace. Fear not," the voice called, coming closer. "I heard shouts. I am sent on a quest to give succor and aid. I sing, you know, to keep the bears away. If they hear you coming, they sort of just amble along away from you. Fear not. A king approaches, a king of the woods. If you be true, you have nothing to fear." "Let's go," the princess said, finding the strength to leap up. "Come on, let's avoid this." But Philip held her and pointed in the direction the voice was coming from, like a hunter waiting for a stag to appear. "But if you're one of those demons sent by that hag Maleficent, I would stay away, for I wield a mighty staff and cudgel." Out from behind a tree stepped someone who was very probably not a demon. He wore a ragged black and red cloak with torn orange sleeves and an undershirt. His boots had probably once been fine, but now were bound up and relaced with vines and awkward pines of badly cured leather and sinew. What was likely white hair spurting in all directions from his head, and brow and neck and chin was gray and brown, well dusted with dirt and twigs and leaves. One of his eyes was missing, the skin hanging loose over the socket in sad bags. He did indeed have a mighty staff, or more precisely a giant branch used as a crude walking stick. His cudgel was just a large skull-shaped rock he carried in his other hand. "Father?" Philip whispered. Philip? No, it cannot be. The old man's voice fell, and he looked around drastically. I'm seeing things again, like I used to, before I lost the bad eye that made me see things that weren't there, before it was put out, to keep it from lying to me. Father, it is me, Philip said, choking. He ran forward and threw his arms around the crazy, dirty man. The princess watched in silence, trying to put it all together. It was too shocking to make sense. The king began to weep and clasped his bear-like arms tightly around Philip. Philip, Philip, I wish you were not here. Glad as I am to see you, I only remained sane at all by assuming you were safe, away from all this, slipped out to be with your little peasant girl. You were right about getting away from the castle. It is the 14th century, after all, isn't it? Oh, Father, you have been out here all this time, by yourself, Philip said, his own eyes wet. The exile, Aurora Rose murmured. I'm so sorry. You! King Hubert rounded on her. Maleficent's little ward. No, no, Philip said. It turns out she was the peasant I thought I was going to marry, but she's actually Princess Aurora. She was in the woods because she was sent away to be raised by the fairies. Wait, I remember that, I think, King Hubert said, raising his eyebrows. It stretched the skin over his socket oddly. He scratched it thoughtfully. Wait, what? Maybe we should start from the beginning, Philip said, but quickly, time is short. Time? King Hubert asked bleakly. I've been wandering all these woods for years, lad. All I have is time. She let Philip do the talking. It was strange, once her adventures outside the castle had begun, to suddenly be sitting aside and letting someone tell the story. It was both restful and unsettling. But I don't understand. Tell me again. Why was he exiled? What did he do? Philip finally asked when he finished the story. He turned to her, as if sensing she felt left out. She shrugged. I think it wasn't much, really. He wanted some say in the ruling of the castle, but it probably had more to do with his presence in the castle. She frowned, thinking. There was no explanation for his being there. He was there in the real world because of our wedding. I'll bet Maleficent was afraid of some sort of irregularity in her dream world. Of him or me remembering something. King Hubert nodded. When the witch threw me out, she said something like, "And now we'll have no problem from you, King Hubert." But it was in a nasty tone. Nasty woman. And then, what happened to you? Philip asked, reaching as if to stroke his father's brow. Then he stopped, seeming to think better of touching the king in such a casual manner. Once exiled, did I give in to fate? The king demanded. I did not. The damn fools in there thought the world was dead out here. Didn't even take a look. Just took her word for it. It was beautiful, green and glorious. Got to go on a walkabout. Haven't done that since I was a lad. Ate off the land, children. Nuts and mushrooms and rabbits and fruit of the trees. Healthy, I tell you. Sometimes I would run into some of Maleficent's minions, he added, philosophically. The skin over his missing eye twitched. Had to arm myself. Didn't have my father's sword anymore. Made myself new weapons. King of the woods. Hubert may be exiled, but he is still king. Aurora Rose found herself putting her arms around the old man as he got worked up again. At her soft touch, he jumped and looked around. Then he smiled and settled down. I couldn't find my kingdom, he continued quietly. It shouldn't have been hard. Stephen and I could see each other's towers on a clear day. We joked about putting up a rope between them, making a quick work of a visit, but it wasn't there. It should have been there, but it wasn't. This is the world inside Aurora's mind, Father, Philip explained gently. She's asleep, or in her dream. She has never been in our kingdom. Quite right, quite right. Lost in some girl's sorceress dream, Hubert said faintly. Nothing is ever quite what it seems. The further I got from that blasted castle, the more things got confused, but also clearer. Memories of another world came back. The real world, I suppose. Stephen and Leah, as good people, good friends. It was all mixed up, rather like the mind of a young lady, I suppose. Instead of taking an umbrage at that, the princess asked the question that had been bothering her. Isn't it odd that you found us just when we were talking about my parents, when I was going to give up on the quest? Hubert drew himself up and looked smug. Nothing is odd in these woods, dear lady. I was called, by a higher power. Some being, an angel, a protective spirit, guided me to you. Told me you were lost. Told me that I should seek you out and guide you home." "The fairies," Aurora Rose whispered. "It must have been the fairies." "Fairies?" the king asked, intrigued. "I suppose it could have been. All golden and twinkly now that I could think about it." "Brilliant! It's all coming together," Philip said with a sigh. "But can you help us with what we're looking for?" she asked, pressing him. "We need to find a cottage in the woods. Looks like the one where I grew up in the real world, with my aunts, small with a thatched roof, I think." "I know all these woods, dear lady," the king said, getting up and giving her a deep bow. "Even when they change, which they do. I knew duty would call, and here I am answering, needed at last. Follow me, children."